Hi, I'm Mandy Medley. I'm one of the worker owners here at Pilsen Community Books, which is an independent bookstore and a worker cooperative here in the beloved Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago. And I'm so excited to welcome you here tonight for an evening with Andrea Bayani, Elizabeth Harris, and Stuart Dybek in celebration of Andrea's new book, If You Kept a Record of Sins, which has been praised by everyone from Jhumpa Lahiri to Colm Toibin to Michael Cunningham, and was just out this month from one of our very favorite presses, Archipelago Press. A couple of notes about how this evening will go. First, I'll introduce tonight's guests, and then there'll be a reading and a conversation in English and Italian. And then at the end, we'll have a short time for Q&A. So if you have any questions at all during the event, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll make sure that they're read out at the right time. If our event does happen to be interrupted due to internet problems, just go to our YouTube channel, pilsencommunitybooks.com, and we will resume streaming there. It'll pop up. You'll find us, no problem. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that you could purchase a copy of If You Kept a Record of Sins on our website at pilsencommunitybooks.com or bookshop.org or on Archipelago's website. I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful book. So now, without further ado, I'll introduce tonight's guests. Andrea Bayani is an Italian novelist, journalist, and poet whose work has been translated into many languages. His novel, Every Promise, won the prestigious Baguda Prize. His collection of short stories won the Settembrini Prize in 2014. And If You Kept a Record of Sins, the beautiful book we're here to celebrate tonight, has won the Supermodello Prize, the Brancati Prize, the Recanati Prize, and the Lo Straniero Prize. And I'm sure every guest tonight can tell me if I pronounced that incorrectly. He teaches at Rice University in the Department of Classical and European Studies. Elizabeth Harris's translations for Archipelago include Antonio Tabucci's Tristano Dies, For Isabel, A Mandala, and Stories with Pictures. For her translations of Tabucci, she has won the National Translation Award for Prose and the Italian Prose and Translation Award. And we're really excited to welcome Stuart Dybek here tonight because he's from our neighborhood, so it's really nice to have him here. And he was born and raised in Pilsen, where we are, in Little Village. Dybek is a writer of place, and those neighborhoods are central to his fiction and poetry. He is the author of 6 books of fiction, including Childhood and Other Neighborhoods, The Coast of Chicago, and I Sailed with Magellan, all set in Pilsen, as well as the poetry collection Brass Knuckles and Streets in Their Own Ink. His work has received many awards, including a MacArthur Genius Award, and he is currently the Distinguished Writer in Residence at Northwestern University. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Elizabeth. Is that right?
Yeah. So, Mandy, thank you very much for having this event. It's wonderful, and I really want to thank Andrea and Stuart. Thank you so much for being with us. And then I have to say thank you to Jill Schoolman and everyone at Archipelago Books who, is so wonderful to work with. Just a great press and a great supporter of international literature and translations. And I'm going to read the opening chapter of Andrea's novel, which is actually a paragraph long. And then we thought what we'd do is have Andrea read the Italian right after, and we're hoping that as a result you can hear some of the rhythms of the Italian, which I think it might help to actually do it afterwards as opposed to prior. So here goes. I think it happened to you too the first time you arrived, that a man was there waiting for you just past the baggage claim exit with your name on a sheet of white paper. And he studied the faces one by one, trying to guess which face went with his sign. The man waiting for me pressed against the barrier, raising his sign higher than all the others, and those signs waving around made it feel almost like a protest rally. Then we recognized each other. I walked toward him, and he folded the sheet of paper over twice, and it disappeared into his breast pocket. Your first and last name had been written there, like you were the one who'd arrived and not me who'd come all this way to see you put underground.
So, yeah, I'm moved. So thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Liz, for reading in your words, coming from my words, and thanks, Stuart, for being with us. So I want to just now read in Italian, and just to feel, to make you feel the sound, and because we are talking about music as well. When you talk about writing, you have always to use at least your eyes and your ears and lots of other organs. Credo sia successo anche a te la prima volta che sei arrivata qui, che c'era un uomo appena oltre la zona franca del recupero bagagli che ti aspettava col tuo nome scritto sopra un foglio bianco, e una a una guardava le facce tentando di indovinare quella giusta da associare al suo cartello. L'uomo che aspettava me premeva contro la transenna, alzando il foglio più in alto di tutti, e più che una procedura d'accoglienza con quei cartelli in aria, sembrava una manifestazione di dissenso. Poi ci siamo riconosciuti, io che sono andato verso di lui e lui che ha piegato in quattro il foglio e l'ha fatto sparire nel taschino. Sopra c'erano scritti il tuo nome e il tuo cognome, come fossi tu a dover arrivare e non io che venivo fin lì per vederti finire sottoterra. And that's it. And that's I'm just gonna add something that I remember exactly where I was. We were talking with Stuart just before starting the live streaming about Liguria. And I told him that Liguria, that is a region in Italy that is in the north, but with the sea. And I was telling him that this book was written partly in Paris and partly in Liguria. And I was mentioning that was written for a big part was written in Genoa, that is the main city of Liguria. And I forgot. That's why I keep talking to Stuart also now in the live recording that the first paragraph was written in a house that was exactly in the same town where Calvino was born, that was next to the border, very close to the border with France, that is Sanremo. And when I first wrote this, it's a very short paragraph. At that point, I still didn't know what I was about to write. I just, I don't know, it was just a moment in which after spending so much time taking notes and having imagined that the story would have begun in a way or another, planning lots of writing, lots of things, being sure of every incipit, of every first phrase I wanted to write. And then all of a sudden, as it always happens, at least to me, all my plans just disappeared, and I was in that house in Liguria, in the same town as where Calvino was born, and I just wrote it as if it was a poem, and it's prose, but I wrote it in just, I would say in just a breath, just breathing one time. It was a long breath because it took the first time, I guess, 3 hours, and then more days afterwards. But it happened like that, and all the plans I had about how to start a story that was a story about the son and the mother and so on. We are going to talk about everything. All the plans vanished because at a certain point, there's just writing that decides where to start, and has to be a very natural a very natural movement. So the more you force writing, the more words want to say, no, you are not our boss. we have the right to say. And sometimes all of a sudden they say the phrase, and you follow and you surf, and it happened like that.
Well, I have a question, and let me start it with what you just said. They're showing a Hemingway kind of retrospective now on television, and his most famous novel in some ways has a similar effect. That is, A Farewell to Arms starts with this incredible rhythmic opening. And when I began to read Liz's translation of your book, which now listening to your description of how you began to write it, it seems that what carries one into the book and carries one away is exactly that rhythmic opening. And I thought it was tremendous that the translator could take the rhythm from one language and create that effect in another. It reminds me of William Weaver capturing something, at least, about one of the greatest novels of the 20th century, which is Invisible Cities.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. But my question is that you say that you did have these thoughts, and then when you nailed that rhythm for yourself, it took you kind of in a different direction, perhaps, or you began writing out of a different sense. But I did wonder, as an American reader, I couldn't help but read in a context of other books about young men and their mothers, and the two that came to mind. One of them was a game changer for American literature, and that was Stop Time by Frank Conroy. And the other one I think was highly influenced by that book, and that was Tobias Wolff's This Boy's Life. And the things that those books both had in common were they had a memoir. Well, they actually were both memoirs, actually, not novels, but the reviews of them, and I think the impact they had on American literature were books written in which mother was not exactly some kind of sacred, untouchable figure, but a flawed, real, sexual human being. And I kind of wondered, so in other words, as a reader, I put my own context on your book. I wondered what your context was when you began writing it. I don't know Italian literature well enough to know if there is a context. There must be.
Yeah. So for the first context, I would say, if I had to think of a context, I first think of something that is connected to language more to poetry than to novels. Meaning we were talking about the last Montale and what he did was I guess that the great thing that he's basically the only one probably after Dante that could do that was to play music with everyday life objects. And so to kind of create a wonderful sound, sometimes even create the elegy, but with an object, with the glass, with the kitchen, with the very everyday life settings. No, so for me, this was the starting point. Not necessarily Montale, but this music, and it's very interesting what you are saying about the rhythm, about the fact that Liz started reading that way, and it's also the fact that she reads that way even before translating this way is it's it's amazing, and for a writer who has to deal with different translators, but not every translator is able to feel the rhythm and to feel the music. And so my starting point was rhythm, was this incredible Italian coming from Montale on, and many other different writers who wrote about children, but was not that the point. The point was to find that rhythm, that music, and when Liz started reading that way, to me is completely consistent with the questions she asked me over time. And from the questions, you always understand what kind of translator you have. Because if a writer asks you things connected to internal rhymes and says, no, I will change this word. I know that you want that, but I want to change this word because it's there's a rhyme that sounds great with this other word. And when I read Liz writing this kind of comments, I say, oh my God, finally. Oh my God, yeah, this idea that there's music, and then she has different instruments, because in an Italian kitchen, to play the music, we have a certain kind of spoons and certain kind of glasses, and she has different spoons and different forks and different glasses because she's American, and the walls of the house of the kitchen are different, and probably she has wooden floor and we have marble or whatever, but still she has to make that sound. And that's why the rhythm is different, because it's but the point is that it's a rhythm, it's a music. And so when I first started, basically, the first phrase, very well, it's so weak because they are just a few words. They are weak. They are just a little army of 10, 15, 20 words, and they have to push the whole novel forward. And so if they start with running in the right way and they push the novel the right way, this rhythm, and so everybody, it's like playing that you start with the first ball, playing pool, and then goes away, and so the starting point, the first phrase, pushed. And the rhythm was that, what happened, and then I'll go back to the question of the mother and the setting, was basically that I don't know if it happens to you as well when you write, but if I have my rhythm, that's at that point I become kind of a slave of that rhythm. And whatever happens in my life happens with this rhythm. I start thinking in that rhythm. Of course, my thoughts are kind of boring when I'm not writing, but it's just that gives the rhythm to life. That's what literature does. And so when I first wrote this paragraph and I was in that house, I didn't know that it would have been, now I have to use a word that today in this time is so crazy, but would have been a contagium, would have been, there are people who, when they sing or when they dance, you can't but dance, no? And so they entered dancing, and all the rest of the novel that was not written yet started dancing. And so, but then it took a while to write it down. There's there are many Italian novels, and I mentioned not as a novelist, as a poet, Montale. But then I also had an American novel in my mind. I don't know if I read it at that time or not. But for sure, it was around me, and it was Wildlife by Richard Ford. So that, for instance, it's too bad, or too bad, it's too good, because I have a read that I want to read now, that is the Conroy one, because I didn't know. I checked and I saw that it's translated as well, but I mean, I can read it in English as well. I love Tobias Wolff for so many things, even if I didn't read this one. But I love his writing, his short stories, his army novels, and so on. But I don't know why at that moment, probably I read Wildlife by Richard Ford a few months before. I don't know, but in my mind there was, because also in that book there's a relationship between a son and the mother, uh, and uh, um, and the idea that there's always something, that your parents are kind of a mystery, no? And that's the point. I don't know if in Wildlife there was that, but what the echo was, and what I was writing at the time, is that you assume you know them, and moreover your mom, no, because a son or a daughter, when you are just born, you and your mom, a baby can't distinguish, can separate himself or herself from the mother. When he says I, says both, and then it takes the whole life, and in Italy 3 lives, from a son to separate from from his mom, and still, in this case, in the case of this book, then it's a mother that who disappears, because goes away, goes to another country, and starts coming back, and then no more. But still, I don't know, when I was writing and echoing this novel by Richard Ford, I thought about this, about what a mystery is, the thing, the person you consider the closest to yourself, the person you think you know the most, so much that you can't think that is someone different from you. And then all of a sudden you have to say you. This book is also kind of a letter said to you, and you don't know what this this means. Yeah, that's my context. So, but I want to ask, since I have Liz here, I want to also ask Liz a question. That it's really about the rhythm, meaning what's the way. So, how important is rhythm for you? And let me say something as if I was not an author you translated, as if I was someone coming to your, sitting there on your couch with a glass of wine, to whom you can say also bad things about your authors. When you hear a sound, what's the point is, because I was amazed by your rhythm, that you want to create a rhythm, a language that is similar to that, or that as an echo, or how it works, how it's how to, not how to translate the meaning, how to translate the music.
Right. Well, I mean, first off, the joy of, well, I just love this book. I knew, from the opening paragraph, actually, I read it and started translating. I just thought, holy cow, this is a voice, and I am a very voice-based translator. I'm really drawn to works that push on the music of prose, and my goal in the translation is not to impose my opinions of what makes good, music, not entirely, but to make sense of what's there. To take. I mean, I don't entirely see it as just sound either. I feel like it's visual too. I look at the patterning of your sentences, um, how the phrases are put together, and I want to echo that as well. And I don't think I mean, English doesn't have, it just doesn't have the same sound, as Italian. So um, how do I make it echo? I think is partly by, I try really hard to follow the patterning of your phrasing. But if it doesn't work, then I'm going to make it beautiful in English. I mean, ultimately, I feel like I have to be true to both. And I was saying prior to our starting to talk that in that opening paragraph, my sense is that it's a punch. That paragraph, it's just has to have that impact that you were talking about. And there's a phrase in the middle of the paragraph where you have the signs, and there's in the Italian, it's, I don't remember exactly what it is in the Italian, but it's a standard phrase of più che questo. It has to do with a manifestazione. Do you know what I'm talking about, Andrea? Do you remember
the phrase is più che una procedura d'accoglienza, more
Yes.
than blah blah blah, welcome.
Yeah. More than this, it's that.
Yeah.
And it just, for the purposes of English, I'm not going to, especially in the opening of the novel, I just was a little ruthless there, and I just got rid of it. So that sentence does not have, does not quite have the same patterning, and I'm, that's how I do it, is paying very close attention to what's there, and then putting it aside after I've paid close attention and making sure that it resonates in English. So, I go over many, many drafts, a crazy amount of drafts. I laughed inside when you said that you wrote that in 3 hours, because I mean, you wouldn't believe how long it took me to translate it. But by the end, my final drafts, I'm no longer looking at the Italian at all. I'm just, being a little ruthless with the English, not entirely changing sentences, but just tweaking. And that is actually, by the time I turn it in, the joy of working with Jill Schoolman is that she tweaks it that much further, so she brightens it up even more with her wonderful edits. But I knew when I translate something that's beautiful, I trust the writer, and you use a lot of repetition. I follow that repetition. If there's repetition, it's going into the English, and English has no problem actually with repetition. We like repetition. I sometimes actually exaggerate your repetition to just get the point across. Like I might make it repeat more. You have a way of phrasing your sentences with the K construction, which is actually very difficult to get into English. And I tried to make use of and me doing this. I use that kind of very casual spoken English to try to get at that, but it becomes its own rhythm because it's repeated over and over again. I don't know if you're aware of using that structure, but you use it a lot in this novel. And so, I really I follow what you did and tried to make it, sing in that new language. So thank you. It's nice of you to say. It's a joy to translate it.
Yeah. It's yeah, and the one thing that it's I don't know your experience as a Stuart as a reader. I always get lost in the stories. I can't remember plot. I'm a disaster. I really need someone to summarize for me a novel before I read it, because otherwise I really can't. I don't know. It's I guess it's a problem of my brain. So and I have problems with describing spaces.
Mhm.
No, and to describe a space, a house, and in parentheses, the last book I just wrote, and it was just published in Italy, is titled Il libro delle case, the book of homes, and it's just made a story of a man told by the houses he lived in. So I challenged myself even more. And one funny thing was that Liz, as a translator, she's worse than me in understanding, in
Uh,
figuring out how a room is, or what's the entrance. And so she kept writing. So, but tell me, so where's
yeah,
the gate? And
that's
that's why the point was that at the beginning I thought she was worse than me, because she couldn't figure out what the spaces were. And then I realized what you realize always with good translators, that you messed up the description of the spaces, so they don't match really with there are two doors next to each other that were supposed to be, or there's a character entering and it seems that the bedroom is upstairs and then is downstairs and so on.
I don't know if it's the case with all translators, but for me, I mean, I'm very visual as a reader, and I mean, Stuart wrote about the imagery of this book, and it's another aspect of the book that I just adore, and sometimes the thing is that sometimes the images are intense and acute, and then I push to make them as visual as possible. And then every once in a while, there's an image that it's just not quite as crystal clear. But the trick, I think, this is the trick. The more that I translate, is that we as translators we really really want to clarify. It can be great, but it's also a problem because you clarify too much and you turn it into, you lose the mystery of it. I actually asked Andrea, I remember this very well. I asked you, there's a gate a little bit further on in this novel. This gate to this factory opens up. It's the wings of this gate, and it's incredibly visual. And then a little later on in the novel, that same gate has a little door that opens that someone walks through. And I had a terrible time trying to figure out, well, how is this working? And I asked Andrea if he might get on Skype with me and or maybe, send me a drawing. And his response was, it's a magic gate. And that, honestly, and I left it alone. I just, it can be surreal. This novel is a bit surreal. It has this crazy egg, which it's a very imagistic novel, but that egg you can't fully see, and I think that in some ways is a bit like what Kafka does. He gives you something and you can see it, but you kind of can't. And as a translator, you have to let some things be. So.
Yeah. So how about the imagery, Stuart? You were.
Well, I thought that was along with rhythm. I love imagery in prose, and I think we're talking about two aspects that anybody who reads poetry just takes for granted. But because prose has no scansion in English, no iambic pentameter, none, rhythm doesn't get talked about as clearly in prose, and in some ways I think that's an advantage. And the same thing is true of imagery. No one would, there was a school called Imagism around Ezra Pound a century ago. People are done talking about that. And yet the image in prose is not. I taught a class on it one time at Iowa, University of Iowa Writers Workshop. I didn't even want to teach the class. You were forced to teach a class. And the second week, there were 50 people instead of the original 15 who were supposed to take the course, only because it seemed so strange to prose writers that were talking about the centrality of images. And yet they are so central. You know, Moby Dick, that's an image.
Yeah.
So, but going back to Liz's point about the magical gate, one of the and clarifying, I thought that was a great point, that how translation is almost cornered having to do that. And how does the translator capture both clarity and yet leave the mystery there? And one of the ways that it's done is through the image. The image is always smarter than the writer. The writer's job is to make the image and then leave it alone. There's a cliche, an image is worth 1,000 words. That's true in writing. The image in writing is worth 1,000 words. So, and the book is exemplary. Your book is exemplary in using it that way. So,
Yeah.
one little, whether the connection was intentional or not, to get into the egg and to get into the casket, there's a parallel there. Does the writer explain it? He does not.
Yeah.
Is it there for the reader to play around with? Will the reader be haunted by it? Will the reader cooperate with the text and become part of a creator? Yeah, that's just going to happen. Part of being a human being. You think metaphorically.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's yes, the magic, yeah, as you were saying, and I guess it comes from I really was nourished. My nourishment was mainly poetry, and what I like the most is reading poetry, and I use it like poetry as well, like I don't know, 3 drops of melatonin under the tongue before sleeping. If I can read a few lines of Miłosz or Montale, or and they just enter my blood and so on. And this is what I just said is an image, because you don't have to explain, because basically. And then maybe there are questions from the audience. It's writing, as you know, is always this very hard and moving at the same time fight between rationality, and the tool is rationality. Words are just exactly the soldiers of the brain. And what doesn't come, what doesn't happen with words. I mean, life doesn't happen with words. Emotion, you don't fall in love with words. You don't get sad with words. Then words can open, can help, can heal, can hurt, and so on. But what happens is always without words. And in this case, this longing, then we didn't say so much about the story of the book, but the readers, I'm sure, will find a way to understand the plot. Just have someone who, like exactly as they do, someone who tells the story of the book, or just read. But the point is, how can you rationally explain if everybody? How can you explain a relationship between a mother and a son rationally? It's impossible. It's impossible to be explained. And so writing, but not only in this case, but writing is always this incredible and interesting and charming fight between words that are the army of the brain, and they want to, basically, they come to say, okay, rationally is that. And then, but inside you have to scoop rationality from the kind of gate or that you are building through rationality. And images are exactly that. The images are just the one boy who comes and steal your ball while you are just there with your foot on the ball, relaxed, and comes this boy and starts playing and goes away, and you say, oh my God, this was my ball. I was playing soccer by myself, and you just stole my. So images are just basically they betray the tool that they are given to explain. So there are words and then images. With an images, you, Stuart, were saying there's nothing to say more than that. As soon as you start explaining, it's gone. It's just a dream, and you wake up. And the good thing of dreaming is waking up and not being able to understand, but having a clear emotion, feeling, sensation. I don't know what the right word in English is, but you know everything. Images are the only way in which language can do this trick of saying, okay, brain, bye-bye, I'm gonna steal the ball, and that's the point. And this was an image.
For sure. Andrea, would you like to answer a question or two?
Yeah.
So we have a couple in the chat. One's in English and one's in Italian. And so I'll read the English one first, and then I'll put the Italian in the Skype chat so that you can make sure to understand, because my Italian's terrible. But the English question is, my father is Romanian, and we both love the book, and we were both struck by how right you get Romanians and Romania. How did you become so familiar with Romania enough for this accurate portrayal? And a related question, does that have something to do with a linguistic connection you have between Italian and Romanian?
So I basically, I traveled a lot between Italy and Romania, just to, I started going there just because it happened that I knew that there was the story starts because the mother of a friend of mine was just a business manager in Romania. So it was an Italian woman who went to Romania just for business, because Romania was supposed to be, for Italian capitalistic people, was considered convenient, and for taxes, for all these kind of things. And so I first started traveling. I just took an airplane and I went there, and I got lost, and I traveled the whole country, and it was such I completely fell in love with Romania. So I guess that the answer, I would say that I could answer saying, because I traveled a lot and I spent so many months going back and forth from Italy and Romania, and of course having the Latin root, it's easier to understand. Also from the point of view of cultural elements, it's easy to understand each other. But basically, I guess I could describe that way, and I'm glad. Thanks for saying that is someone coming from there or knowing there can recognize. I guess because I fell in love with that country, and I guess you can as a writer, I can describe only things that I love, even if I can love in a way that it's the opposite of love. In some cases, I can also describe. I can describe big emotions that I felt, and so I can also describe hate or sadness. But in the case of Romania, I guess the Italian businessmen are not portrayed in a way that you would like to be them. But probably you can feel the love I had for that country, and yeah, and basically, yeah, it was a, yeah, I still, and for me was also, sorry if I'm answering, I'm too long in the answer, was also a matter of seeing for the first time what capitalism does when it starts. Now, because I was born in 75 and Italy was already a capitalistic country. And going to Romania and see what capitalism does in a place that had another system before, you have the chance to understand, or at least to experience what, to see it. We live in capitalism. It is as if we were not even able to see the habitat we are living in. We can't see the air, we can't see the wind, we can't see the water if we are swimming. And that was the way for me to see capitalism. But basically it was love. And the second thing was about the libro delle case. Yeah, so El libro delle case, yeah, it's just this novel. It's true. It was just a few days ago was longlisted for the Premio Strega, that is the most important and prestigious Italian literary prize. So we secretly have some pages that are translated, but still it's something. It's just it was just published now in Italy, so it's gonna be long, the trip. But as I was saying, a very short description is the life of a man described through his houses, the houses he lived in, and so it's kind of a puzzle where you can see him as a little boy, and then as a man that is married with someone else, and then goes back to where he was just a teenager, and so on. And there's a marriage. That's a story, the whole life of someone, and it starts from. It's basically the idea that every house we live in. We live completely, and the house is the only one who knows you completely, because you don't have to show anything to your house. You don't have to choose the version of yourself you want to give, and then you leave the house, and every time you move to another house, you can feel nostalgic, but at the same time you think, oh, okay, now I can enter a new story. I can have a new house. I mean, a house is a narrative, where you enter. And so you do that many times, can be 3 times, 4 times, 20 times, 40 times in a life. And every time you pretend to be the same person, and every time we think of ourselves as teenagers or little boys or girls, we assume that we are the same person. But it's something that we say to ourselves to sleep better, because it's hard to think that I was the same guy as I was when I was 15. And so basically the only chance you have to tell the impossible story of someone is to put together, to enter, that's something that only literature can do, to enter the house where the boy was a boy, and then to put together, to just assemble next to the house where the same one that has the same name but hardly recognizable lived when he was 40, or when he got married, or when he divorced, and at the same time when he was an unhappy baby or a happy baby, or and so on. So basically, the Book of Homes, the Libro delle Case, is exactly that, and there's this structure that is, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's kind of a portrait made in a puzzle, in a collage of, and you can recognize, so the face is made by different parts of the faces that you had in your life, and of course at the end you can recognize the guy you were, but it's just a matter of recognize recognizing. It's just that you are kind of similar to what you were.
Thank you. Liz, I know we had talked briefly about reading some more from the book. Would you like to read a little bit more before we leave this evening? I'd love to hear more.
Is there time?
I think so.
Okay. All right, I'll read more, by God. This is a this is a chapter. See, I thought I was, all set. Turned off my mic and everything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. This is a chapter later on in the novel, and actually it comes just prior to a terrible conflict that that the narrator has with the pig of the novel, Anselmi, who he's just a nasty man, and so this is an interesting placed chapter. I think it's right prior to him having a very ugly argument. This is in the barbershop, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
And then it's right after their Christian and Lorenzo going to the people's palace. So it's very interesting placement. And this is the narrator going to his mother's apartment, which she's no longer in because she's died, and so he's visiting that apartment on his own. They took me for a thief, the people in your building. They all came out together, someone running down from the 8th floor, someone at the railing. The only door on your floor still closed had someone at the peephole. They found me there, your door open, my bag in my hand, and the alarm howling up and down the stairs. We all gazed at each other a moment, not speaking, all of them focused on my face and me looking each of them over in turn. One little old lady stepped out from the group and came toward me, pushed me aside, waving me off, and she walked in, typed in the code on the panel, and the alarm stopped howling. Then she walked back out and squeezed in among the others, crammed onto the landing, and joined them in glaring at me. I broke the silence with a single word, phew, while tapping myself on the chest. One of the few Romanian words I knew that I'd learned from Christian. So all I said was, phew, son, and there was a widespread sigh, and one after the other, they walked away. Before going, the lady who turned off the alarm came forward, holding a sheet of paper with numbers on it, the alarm code, which I'd copied down wrong. And only then did I realize the code was my birthday. And so the door closed, and you and I were left in a silence that felt like it must have come searching for you. I walked softly, not to be heard almost. There was a time we would play this game, would search for each other around the house, with me always hiding under the bed, and you in the tub. And when you found me, you grabbed hold of my feet and pulled me out like a dresser drawer. One by one, I tried every chair, sat down, gazed at the room. In every chair, I let my weight down slowly, not wanting to make too much noise, unseemly creaking. And after the chairs, the couch, the recliner, then I opened drawers, pulled out a fork and knife, and wondered how you could eat with them, so heavy, so oxidized, so cold to the touch. I set myself a place. There was no tablecloth, just 2 placemats. I took a plate left to dry by the sink and the overturned glass beside it, a white water ring on steel. I changed my seat, then sat down on each side of the table, trying to imagine which was yours. Another game we used to play. I'd turn around, you'd briefly take a seat, and I had to guess. I'd sit down, contemplate, you'd tell me to close my eyes and search for warmth, your shape. I almost always managed it. I'd open my eyes, look at you and say, you were here. And you'd say, you're the greatest magician I know. Now, in your apartment on the 7th floor, I did the same thing, searching for you on your kitchen chairs, trying to guess where you were. But I didn't know what to search for anymore after all this time, what heat to go hunting for, what shape you'd taken in the meantime. And so I sat down on each one, and after the first round, a second, a third, a fourth, and the only heat I found was mine. The only shape was mine, my legs, my seat on the chair. The apartment had grown dark now, but I barely noticed, sitting in the kitchen before an empty plate. I went into the bathroom, got undressed, stepped into the shower. You're only home after your first shower. I washed with your sliver of soap, dried myself with your bathrobe, brushed my teeth with your toothbrush, still on the sink, like an old flag on an abandoned fortress. I scraped it over my teeth, rooting around in my mouth between my tongue and palate, and then I set it back, upright, with its unruly bristles. The mirror was too low. It cut off my head. And to think there was a time you used to lift me up, to look into my eyes. I was still wet when I left the bathroom, a trail of droplets behind me. I turned off all the lights except the nightstand lamp. I took my pajamas from my bag, put them on, and went over to your bed. I dropped onto it, tried to bounce, then slipped under the covers. And it was almost as if I felt your bones under there, that I was lying between bone and muscle and had to stay very still, or else I'd hurt you.
Oh my God. Thank you, Liz.
Well, thank you. Such a great book.
I feel like that's such a lovely way to end our time together. I'm really grateful that Liz, that you were willing to read that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's fun to read. So.
Well, before we end our time, does anyone have any final thoughts?
The thought I had was that I was grateful that she read, and I guess it's the best way to say goodbye. And the other thing it was that was so amazing because I didn't remember. So I didn't remember because there were things that I didn't remember, and I didn't remember because it happened in another language, and so yeah. So I'm just grateful, and to Liz and to Stuart that was with us, and Mandy, and to all the other people who are in the box with us. But yeah, then the book is made of paper, and in the book, as Liz was saying, and so I guess unless there are other words, I wanna. I'm grateful to Archipelago because this way of making books is just a way of caring for books, and there's books and stories, and they need care, and the way they are crafted, and even the paper and the font of the letters, and besides the editing and all the things, it's I mean, it's a gift, and it's a gift. So yeah, I guess that it'll be a gift also to have the object. So even if you will not like completely the book, but this object is just amazing, and yeah, it's worth the price.
Yeah, no one does it better than Archipelago, that's for sure. Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Again, you can pick up this beautiful book on our website at pilsencommunitybooks.com or wherever fine books are sold. Yeah, don't miss out. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you.
you.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.